Okay, council members, we're live on YouTube.
Can you turn your cameras on, please, committee members? And we're missing Donna.
I'll touch base with Donna. Just give me a moment.
Am I the only one hearing that squeak?
No, I hear it too.
Hear it. You don't hear it, Terry?
Yeah, I hear it.
You hear it?
Maybe I'm the one squeaking.
Mute yourself for a second, Sherry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's you.
I'm the only one here and there's nothing going on.
I wonder if your
Pump
computer is
running.
making noise.
Pardon?
I wonder if your computer is making the noise.
It's not making it physically here. Huh.
You have two computers on?
Pardon?
You have two computers operating?
Yep.
But only one of them's on. Only one of them's got you on to this, right?
Yeah, I have two computers on as well, but is there a squeak on my end?
Not that I can hear.
Any squeaks?
Council members, just give me one moment. We have a Victor Rapp who just has a question. Just give me 1 sec. Hi, Victor. Hi, Victor Rapp.
Hi, it's your computer fan that's making that noise. It's your computer fan, probably, that's picking it up.
Oh, you're saying it's her computer fan that's making the noise?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. Thanks for letting us know. We'll see if there's anything.
No problem. You need a noise reducing headset or your fan might be going, so.
Okay, thank you so much.
We found Donna.
Yep, we have found Donna. She's just waiting to connect.
I could suggest, Sherry, maybe when you're not speaking, maybe mute yourself. That way we don't hear that fan.
Okay, committee members, Donna's having some issues. Michelle, I believe, is on the line. If you could give Donna a call on her cell phone and just help her through that, and we can just get the meeting started. Great, thanks, Council.
All right, I will call the Committee of Adjustment meeting of Tuesday, January the 19th, 2021 to order. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of the committee, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, I will turn the meeting over to our planner to announce the purpose of the meeting.
Thank you, Sherry. The Committee of Adjustment is holding a public hearing in accordance with Section 45 of the Planning Act as amended in order to consider applications for relief from the Township Zoning Bylaw, which is the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the Township number 2009-021. The prescribed notices of the public meetings are provided by prepaid first-class mail to all residents within a 60-meter radius of the subject properties. As well, the ministries and agencies were circulated via email. The subject properties were posted with a sign advertising the public hearings, and the notices were also available on the Township's website. This notice circulation complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. In order to be notified of a decision of the Township of Selwyn on a minor variance application, a request must be made to the Township. So the first application tonight is application file number A3520. The owner of the property is Victor Rapp and the agent is Lori Young. The property address is 343 Fothergill Isle in the Ennismore Ward. This application seeks relief from the Township zoning bylaw in order to decrease the setback from accessory structures to a principal or main building from 2 meters to 1.8 meters, to increase the maximum coverage of an accessory structure from 5% to 6.6%, to increase the maximum height of an accessory structure from 4 meters to 4.6 meters, and also to decrease the minimum setback from the high water mark from 30 meters to 25 meters to an existing dwelling at the construction of an additional entryway, as well as from 30 meters to 11.6 meters and 12.3 meters to a structurally non-permanent deck, and from 30 meters to 15.2 meters to a septic system. These variances are being requested so that a front entryway on the roadside of the dwelling can be constructed, as well as they're proposing to demolish an existing shed and replace it with a new detached garage that will be 4.6 meters in height. They're looking to demolish and replace an existing deck and to construct an additional deck. The lot is of a regular shape and it is a waterfront lot, and it does have significant constraints to development. I have completed a review of the minor variance under the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I believe the general intent and purpose of the Township's official plan and zoning bylaw have been maintained. Further, the general intent and purpose of the Township's bylaw has been maintained. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the variance is minor in nature, and I have recommended that the committee grant the variances. Finally, we have received correspondence from the Conservation Authority, and the Conservation Authority doesn't have any objections to the application. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jeanette. I understand that Victor Rapp, the applicant, and the agent Lori Young are on the line. Is there anything else that you would wish to add to what Jeanette has had to say?
Can you hear me? It's Lori.
Yes.
Okay. All I wanted to say is when we started with this property, we were going to raise it and install a basement for storage. And that was deemed not really feasible with the high water table there and the constraints of squeezing in a septic system. So the idea was to get rid of a shed, rebuild the garage just slightly bigger to incorporate what that shed would have done and get some storage up over top of that.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rapp, did you have anything you wish to add?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. Deputy Clerk, was there anyone that signed up to speak against this application?
Well, there's no one else here for this application.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any questions? Anita.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is with regards to the archaeological assessment. Did Curve Lake require one, or has it been taken care of?
Thank you, Anita. No, we haven't received any comments from Curve Lake on any of these applications. However, I do not. I'm just going to check to see the conditions. So I did determine that this would require, under the checklist, I did determine that an assessment would be required.
there any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to A5420. Please, Jeanette.
Okay, so as you said, this is file number A5420. The owner of the property is Mike Epter and the agent is Ken Curry. The property is located at 85 Lakeside Drive in the Ennismore Ward. The application is seeking to increase the maximum lot coverage of accessory structures from 5% to 8.6%, as well as to decrease the minimum front yard setback from 7.5 meters to 4 meters. The applicant is requesting this in order to be able to permit the construction of an accessory structure or a garage, 720 square foot accessory structure that would be situated 4 meters from the front lot line. The application indicates that the lot and elevations preclude meeting the required front yard setback. Therefore, they were due to these topographic constraints, they were requesting that the front yard setback be reduced. So I have completed a review of the application under the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and I have noted that the general intent and purpose of the Township's official plan and zoning bylaw have been maintained. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the variance is minor in nature. And I have recommended that the committee grant the variances. Just note that we have received comments from the Conservation Authority who have no objections to the application subject to the conditions that a planting plan be required in order to ensure compliance with the growth plan.
Right, thank you. Ken Curry, the agent, is on the line. Is there anything that you would like to add in favor of this application, Mr. Curry?
I don't think so. Jeanette's done a very good job of covering the whole thing, and it's pretty basic. I mean, up and down the length of the lake shore there, most people have their garages in similar positions for the same reasons, just because of the elevation and the it's really impossible to put it anywhere else because of the slope that takes off to the lake. And other than that, I don't see any problems. The only thing that I might speak to, I know in previous applications with Selwyn Township, when they spoke to archaeology, in instances where the land has been worked up many times before and there's not very much likelihood of there being anything to be found, that in fact the municipality and the committee didn't see or deem the need to have an archaeological assessment done, and I'm asking that they might consider the same thing again in this instance.
Jeanette, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, I completed the assessment against the checklist, and we noted that one was not required in this.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Clerk, was there anyone that signed up to be in opposition to this application?
Madam Chair, there's no one else here for this application.
All right, thank you very much. I'll bring it to the committee. Are there any questions on this application? Seeing none, we'll move on to A5520, please, Jeanette.
Thank you. So the property owners are Vernon Hamilton and Chester Hamilton. The agent is Ontario Limited Numbered Company, Lakefield Restaurant, and is care of Kevin Watkins. The address is 107 Queen Street in the Lakefield Ward. The applicant is asking to reduce the minimum required number of parking spaces from what is required to 17 spaces. As well, they're asking to reduce minimum side yard setback from 2 meters to 1.5 meters. The applicant is requesting these variances in order to be able to construct an addition to the existing restaurant, which should be situated at 1.5 meters from the interior side lot line. The applicant has indicated that the purpose of this additional floor space is actually to help with the proper social distancing measures and to provide for better flow between the takeout counter and the servers. There isn't going to be a very little or very small increase in seating. So I have completed a review of the application of the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And I do believe that the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw have been maintained. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the variance is minor in nature. And I have recommended the variance be granted by the committee. Also, we have received comments from the Conservation Authority who have no objections or concerns to the application.
Right, thank you very much. Deputy Clerk, is there anyone here in support of or opposition to this application tonight?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't muted. No one is here for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any questions on this application? Jerry.
Thank you. Through you to Jeanette. They're increasing the space of the restaurant for social distancing. Eventually, this pandemic will be over. So do they plan on demolishing that portion or keeping that portion and adding more tables, because we're reducing the number of parking spots to 17 and they require 19. So basically they're going to, once the pandemic's over, they're going to fill that full of tables, have less parking than's required. That's my question.
Yeah, so I did ask that of the applicant, and the intent is actually to maintain that counter area. There's going to be a server area where servers will have stuff, but also a takeout counter area, and that will be maintained because even prior to the pandemic, they did find a conflict. The conflict just made greater because of the pandemic.
All right, I'm just following, trying to make sure we're clear here, because we made Kingdon Timber Mart do 100 and some odd parking spots that'll never, ever be full. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping the same sort of standards here. I just want to make sure there isn't a COVID loophole.
Okay, thank you. Anita?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the last paragraph of the description of the project, it talks about the 17 spaces with a minimum 2 barrier-free spaces, and it says note an additional barrier-free space will need to be added. So does that mean that by the time they would be having the construction or whatever finished, will there be 2 barrier-free spaces?
Yeah, so in answer to your question, Nita, there will be. They do still have to go through site plan control. And so that's where we've picked up that at this point they have 1 barrier-free space and they do need a minimum of 2.
Thank you.
Donna?
Mine is just a comment. I think that this is a very positive sign that we have a restaurant being able to do an addition at this time. No questions, just a positive comment.
Thank you. All right, no more questions. We'll move on to the next application, A5620, please, Jeanette.
Thank you. So the property owners are Caitlin and Patrick Jardin. There is no agent, and the address is 287 Arnott Drive in the Ennismore Ward. The application is requesting a reduced minimum setback from high water mark from 30 meters to 25 meters to an addition to the existing dwelling, as well as to decrease minimum interior side yard setback from 3 meters to 1 meters to the same addition. They are requesting us, as I noted, to enable them to construct an addition to the dwelling. The lot is fairly constrained by its shape and where the existing structure is located, as well as it's a waterfront lot. So this really is the only location that they could situate this proposed addition. I have a completed review under the 4+ test of the Planning Act, and I do believe the general intent and purpose of the Township's official 10 and zoning bylaw have been maintained, as well as the variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the proposed variance is minor in nature. I have recommended that variances be approved by the committee. I will note that we received comments from the Conservation Authority who have no objections to the application. I'll also note, just for the public record, that we have received comments from a neighboring property owner, which I did provide via email earlier today. Essentially, they have noted a number of concerns, mostly around the size and the height. So they indicated there'd be an uninterrupted barrier along the lot line. They're concerned about the height of the structure. They're concerned that there's little separation between the properties and that it'll have a visual impact an impact on the visual appeal of their property. I did provide an answer, a response to the neighboring property owners after I received those comments. I did indicate in that response that the property owners have tried to design a fairly small addition, and it is really in the only location that this addition can be. It is proposed to be 4.5 meters in height, which is shorter than the existing two-story dwelling that they're attaching it to. It is going to be slightly taller than the existing garage. They have tried to set back the addition as far as they can. There is an existing hedge that will provide a visual barrier between the two properties. And as well as the addition is proposed to be essentially in line with the front or the roadside of the neighbor's dwelling, which should also help mitigate that visual impact that they feel. They did provide an additional email that indicates that they are still concerned and that they ask that you deny the request for the variance. And I have no further correspondence from them. So I'm open to any questions at this point.
Thank you. Before we proceed, is there anyone on the line for or against this application, Deputy Clerk?
Madam Chair, we do have someone that's called in, but they haven't identified themselves with their phone number ending in 1949. Not sure if you're here for this application.
They're muted.
Okay, I think we can move on.
All right, thank you very much. So the answer was no to that?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Seeing that, we'll bring it to committee. Donna?
Yes, through you to Jeanette. Thank you to Jeanette for giving us the aerial view of the property because it's helped me a lot. It is very unusual property for sure. I'm looking at that hedge and I'm wondering, is it right on the property line or who does the hedge belong to?
Yes, so the aerial photography is somewhat skewed, and so it looks like it is right along the property line. From the survey, it appears that it is more on the neighboring property owner's property than it is on the applicant's property.
Okay, so I was wondering if we could allow another condition to the conditions in the report that we have an arborist look at the hedge and give a report on how the root system can be protected. And if something does happen to the hedge, I don't know if we can say who needs to replace it, but I really think that that hedge would help with the visual aspect of the properties. Can we say who replaces a damaged hedge? I know we can ask for a arborist report to be followed.
Yes, so I have spoken with the property owners late this afternoon, and they are aware that that some of that hedge may be damaged. They also want to ensure that they maintain a visual screening, so they are committed to replacing and adding some mature trees. So I don't think that asking them to complete an arborist report to identify the best way to move forward with the construction, as well as to provide with maybe a bit of a planting plan, would be out of line.
Okay, so could you include that then?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Jerry.
Thank you. Through you to Jeanette, I understand what Donna's trying to do here, but an arborist report's an expense that's just an opinion. There's no guarantee that, you know, the hedge is going to live or die. The root structure's on their property. You know, they're trying to build there. It's just one more hurdle that we're putting these people through to get something done that they're just trying to better their property. And again, it's an opinion. Yeah, if you do this, it shouldn't die. Oh, it died. What's your recourse?
Yes, so the addition of, or the additional condition would be a decision that the committee would have to come to. I do know that I spoke with as I indicated, I spoke with the applicants, and they are committed to making sure that they do replace anything that is destroyed. But again, there's nothing we can really hold them to do that.
Donna?
Yes, I don't really agree with Councillor Heron that it's just an opinion. They actually provide a plan of how they are to wrap the roots and so on if they're exposed. It's a little bit more than an opinion. I know it's not a guarantee, but I would like to put forward that we put that in the conditions. If the other council members do not agree, then that's fine.
You're making a motion to add that as a condition?
I am.
Does someone second that? Nita? I'll call the vote. All in favor? That has lost. Are there any other questions? All right, Jeanette, we'll go on to A5720, please.
Oh, okay, thank you. This is the property owners are Dave Robertson and Dina Ruddle, and the agent is Lori Young. The address is 125 Lakeside Drive in the Ennismore Ward. The application seeks relief from the township zoning bylaw in order to increase the lot coverage of accessory structures from 5% to 5.6%, to reduce the minimum setback from the high water mark from 30 meters to 28.2 meters to a 3-season sunroom addition to an existing dwelling, as well as to decrease minimum setback from 30 meters to 25.5 meters to a structurally non-permanent deck, and to decrease the minimum side yard setback from 3 meters to 1.2 meters to a deck and stairs. So this, the applicant is looking to construct this addition, which would, or the sunroom, which would take place within the 30-meter setback. Therefore, the minor variance is required, as well as there'll be some decking that will be required, or that will be constructed, sort of wrapping around the house and down the side of the house, therefore needing those setback reductions. I do believe the general intent and purpose of the township's official plan and zoning bylaw have been maintained, as well as the variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the proposed variance is minor in nature. And I have recommended the committee grant the variances. I will note that we've received comments from the Conservation Authority who have no issues with the application, as well as we did receive public comment from neighboring property owners who were in support of the application. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Deputy Clerk, I understand the applicant is on the line, Mr. Robertson, and the agent, Lori Young.
That is correct.
Thank you. Do either of you wish to add anything to Jeanette's report?
I don't think so. I think she's mentioned all of it. And yeah, the important thing for us, we wanted to make sure that you knew that the neighboring 123 Lakeside property owners were in support of it. And it's really them that it affects more than anyone, of course, aside from the waterfront for Orca. But no, I think it's all there.
All right, thank you. Is Deputy Clerk, was there anyone that called in opposition of this application?
No one else here to speak to this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll pass it to the committee. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I need a mover and a seconder for these applications before us. Anita and Donna, all in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? That is carried, Madam Clerk. There are no deferred matters, correspondence. The minutes of our last meeting, which was December the 8th, are before us. Andy and Anita, all in favor? It's carried. All opposed? Okay, that is carried. And A motion to adjourn. Our next meeting is February the 23rd. Jerry and Donna, all in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, we'll give it about 5 minutes and then we'll start council meeting. Okay.
Hey there, if you're joining the meeting and your phone number ends in 1624, just hoping you can identify yourself and let us know what you're here for. That was phone number 1624. If you're on the line, if you can let us know what you're here for.
Donna, your mic's open.
It says that I can't start my video because you have stopped it. When I click on the, okay.
And your mic's also open, so. Okay, Anita's here, Jerry's here, Sherry's here, Donna's here. Madam Clerk, are we live and ready to go?
We are indeed ready to go.
Okay, thank you. I will call the regular council meeting to order for Tuesday, January the 19th. I would ask that we all take a moment of silence so that council, staff, and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we are trying to serve. Thank you, everyone. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a bit of a challenge for me, but I am going to declare on the 11.2 with regards to Sherry's motion. I work in a retirement home, and I don't know that I should be involved in discussions related to the particular motion. I'm just not 100% certain, so I am going to declare on that one.
Okay, so noted. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, not seeing any. We will move on to our minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes. We have December the 8th, which is our regular council meeting. We had a special council meeting on December the 10th regarding the preliminary work plans and the budget. And we had a meeting on our CAO evaluation process. So I need somebody to move those. Sherry, thank you. Seconded by Anita. Any discussion? All those in favor? Those are carried. Thank you, colleagues. We will now go on to deputations. We have 2 deputations tonight and a public meeting as well. So we're going to go to our first deputation from Mr. Robinson. And I would remind our presenter that our deputations are for 10 minutes, and I would ask you to please observe that time. And after that deputation, I will ask members of council if they have any comments. So are you there, Mr. Robinson? I see you're on the phone. You need to unmute yourself.
We can just give it a minute. I have asked him to unmute. Mr. Mayor, Brandon has not yet unmuted. I'm wondering if you would like to go ahead with Mike Muir. He is here. I'll leave it to council to make that decision.
Are you able to contact Mr. Robinson?
I will contact him. If you want to just hold a moment, I'll do that again. Just on the phone with Mr. Robinson. He's just working on some technical issues. If you could just give us a minute. Council, Mr. Mayor, Brandon Robinson is just going to leave the meeting and try to come back in and see if that works. And if it doesn't, then perhaps we can proceed with Mike Muir.
Okay, so he's going to call right back in now?
That's right. Hi, Brandon, you there? Okay, Mr. Mayor, my suggestion would be to move on to the next deputation, and we will have IT contact Mr. Robinson and see if we can help out.
Thank you. We will do that. Okay, we're going to move on to our second presentation. Mr. Muir, who I see his icon is on the line. Mr. Muir, you have 10 minutes to present make your presentation. I'm then going to ask our manager of building and planning to speak to his report, which he's prepared in respect of this presentation. And then I'm going to ask for council members to provide their opinion. So, Mr. Muir, I would ask you if you want to get going and to remind you about the 10-minute limit. So please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me and see me?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, good. I got a thumbs up from Anita, so that's great. Okay, I'll get started here. Dear Mayor and Council, my name is Michael Muir from Parkwood Shores, Ennismore. I'm here today to talk about cannabis grow ops in Selwyn Township in general, but also specifically the proposed one at 290 Cork Line, Ennismore. So how did we get here? It's important to understand the following. To start, there was a public mailed out survey to obtain feedback from the community on opt-in and opt-out regarding retail cannabis establishments in Selwyn. As a result of this mailed out survey, there were 767 respondents. Residents received the survey and did respond. Later in 2019, the public was given a notice of an open public meeting via the township website, e-newsletter, and social media to be held on September 17th, 2019. The result was that no members of the public showed up. At this open house and subsequently posted online was a survey comment sheet on where cannabis cultivation should be located. The very important survey was not mailed out, and the result was that the township did not receive any return surveys or comments. On December 10th, 2019, the statutory public meeting was held at the Township Council chambers to review the conclusions of the background report dated September 3rd, 2019, prepared by Meridian Planning Consultants for the township. In their section 2.2 on page 14 states a number of municipalities have passed bylaws that establish setbacks ranging between 150 meters to 500 meters for these facilities from certain types of uses. The county and council also received a response from Peterborough Public Health in a letter dated December 9th, 2019, saying that the official plan and the zoning bylaws require a 150-meter setback from lot lines for outdoor cannabis cultivation and sensitive land use. Through discussions and recommendations from Meridian, a 50-meter setback was finalized. The township finally passed bylaw number 2020-002 for indoor cannabis cultivation with a minimum setback of 150 meters, and outdoor cannabis cultivation was given a 50-meter setback. So this leaves us why I'm here tonight, and that is the issues and concerns with a 50-meter setback to adjoining properties in close proximity with the proposed 290 cork line outdoor cannabis grow op. You should have a map showing you the property location of 290 cork, which is sandwiched between 7 other cork line residential properties and the 25 residential properties in Parkwood Shores. There is an abutting farm to the east and Pigeon Lake to the west. This outdoor cannabis grow operation could cultivate, harvest, and dry cannabis plants on 14.5 acres of rural agricultural land. This may produce in excess of 30,000 cannabis plants per growing season. So here are the issues. Environmental, due to high use of fertilizers, pesticides, wastewater, and harvested plant stalks, leaves, and non-usable debris. In the Federal Cannabis Act, it does require the grower to destroy these byproducts of production. As it turned out, they have told us that that will get tilled back into the soil. Number 2, close proximity impact and the community safety. Number 1 on that is air quality due to strong pungent odors from the growing, harvesting, storage, and destroying of the plant. This is in our backyard 24/7 for 4 months of the year, affecting quality of life indoors and outdoors. This is not comparable to living next to a cornfield or a freshly spread manure. The odor is very strong and quite noticeable at some distance between half a kilometer and 1 kilometer away, depending on wind direction. Although there can be some differences between the impact of an indoor versus an outdoor cannabis production site, many of these adverse effects are exactly the same. The recommendation report dated December 20th, 2019 by Meridian and the September 3rd, 2019 background report spends considerable number of pages on the subject of odor and mitigation through separation and distancing. Number 2, property values may be impacted and could be considered a tough sell. Number 3, well water contamination from the growing process with fertilizers, pesticides, water discharges, and the destroying process. Number 4, well water depletion due to irrigation practices at 290 cork. If they draw water from on-site wells, as the consultant said, in order to irrigate these 14.5 acres, this will have a significant impact on the local aquifer. Number 5, visual impact will be experienced with security fences, gates, motion detecting devices, cameras, and possibility of lights surrounding the grow fields. The purpose of this, as the Federal Cannabis Act states, is to slow down intruders until the police arrive. This is where the community safety comes in. One can get the impression that a grow op is a high target for attack or hijacking of their production. Being in close proximity to a grow op certainly makes one feel uneasy and at risk. We do not want to be directly exposed to this intruder potential. The Meridian draft report dated September 2019 under the Provincial Policy Section 3.1 states that distance is the only effective buffer. Adequate separation distance based on a facility's influence area is the preferred method of mitigating adverse effects. Section 3.2 states the separation distance should be sufficient to permit functioning of the 2 incompatible land uses without adverse effects. The adverse effects are defined in the provincial policy statement, and these are, among others, harm or material discomfort to a person, adverse effects on the health of a person, impairment of the safety of any person, loss of enjoyment of normal use of property. The provincial policy statement classifies sensitive use, among many others, as definitions of any building, amenity area, or outdoor space if routine outdoor activities occur. This was taken into consideration in the Meridian final report and in the existing bylaw for indoor cannabis cultivation. Therefore, buildings such as arenas, community centers, day nurseries, dwelling, libraries, etc., all have a setback of 150 meters from indoor grow operations. The outdoor cannabis cultivation was covered in the same recommendation report, but with a minimum 50-meter setback. In our case, we are far more affected with the adverse effects and negative impact since we reside 24/7 directly at or near this proposed cannabis grow site. This is in our backyards and in our front yards. There are 30 residential homes within 500 meters of this grow site. Cost of the township may be inspection and enforcement, but the real cost is what it does to our community as a whole. This township has many clusters of residential zone properties and subdivisions, along with many recreational trailer parks and golf courses. These are all at risk. As the planning department website states, the goal is to make Selwyn an even better place to live by making the township safe and a well-built community. In the case of 290 Court, they have been given the 50-meter setback. These decisions have consequences which we do not want to be exposed to. I ask council to consider reviewing the response from Peterborough Public Health, since there seemed to have been a disagreement on their request to apply the 150-meter setback from outdoor cannabis cultivation. I ask on behalf of the residents and the community to take our concerns into consideration and look at a revision to the existing setbacks on 290 Cork line of 50 meters and to increase those. Inquiries to Selwyn Township over the past 6 months we're told that the 290 Cork buildings were farm equipment sheds until December 21st, 2020. These issues are not with the federal licensing requirements, but squarely with appropriate buffers and property line setbacks for outdoor cannabis cultivation, which falls within your control. The draft report from Meridian says municipalities need to be established with setbacks between 150 and 500 meters. The provincial policy statement requires separation distance, and the Peterborough Public Health required 150 meters, and we, the residents, request a 150-meter setback. The signed petition attachment B states this. Please do not ignore what we are asking you to act upon. In closing, a sincere thank you to listening to us tonight in this regard to the important community issue at hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to now turn it over to Rob. Rob, you have a report and that you want to present, and if there's anything that Mr. Muir said that you would want to speak to. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I drafted the report actually in light of my discussions with Mr. Muir and the discussions that I had with him and another neighbor, a couple of council members during a conference call actually with an agent on behalf of the applicant for what is to be an application to the federal government for the license. So I'm relatively familiar, I think, with the scope of what the community is concerned about. And so the idea behind drafting the report was to find a way to ensure that those concerns were conveyed to, certainly to the applicant through their agent. And I think, you know, the outcome, I think, of the conference call that we had was that we did get a commitment from the applicant's agent to bring forward a list of concerns that the community expressed to his client. So, so essentially, the recommendation in my report is to kind of reiterate the concerns related to the impact of the security lighting, maintaining the vegetated buffer that currently exists between the residential zone and subject lands, and perhaps even improving it. Certainly the use of water was an issue that was brought up by Mr. Muir during our conversation. And again, we're suggesting here in this context that the applicant take advantage of the surface water opportunities that are available at using Pigeon Lake in this particular context. And also we wanted the applicant to keep the municipality abreast of the licensing process that they're about to undertake with the federal government. So again, just to touch on some of the issues that were expressed by Mr. Muir this evening. The municipality did undertake quite a detailed process to essentially come to the regulations that we currently have in place. So we did make a distinction between growing cannabis indoors and processing cannabis indoors, and growing and cultivating cannabis outdoors. And we took the advice of the consultants after deliberating. Mr. Muir's right. We didn't hear a lot from the public, which was a bit discouraging. That was an opportunity for our constituents, for the broader public, to provide their thoughts and for council's consideration. So ultimately, council was faced with having to make a decision in light of little input. We did get input from the health unit. They were in favor of the 150 meter setback that we put in place for indoor cultivation and processing. And they did ask that we consider 150 meter setback for outdoor cultivation. But again, the consultant thought that in this particular context, that for the most part, provincial policy statements, when it comes to mitigating issues related to particularly as relates to odor from cannabis sites, that it's really meant to address issues from concentrated odors that would come from a processing facility, and not so much from a crop that's grown outdoors. There is a difference. Certainly the PPS talks about discharges from facilities and things of that nature, and which just wasn't seen that those would apply in the context of a crop that's propagated outdoors. So in light of that, what we ended up doing, of course, was setting some rules. The rules are in place today so that people who are in the industry and are interested in taking advantage of the opportunities that the industry provides understand the limits and the regulations that would apply. And they're intended to be transparent and obvious, and again, set the table for people, and they can make an informed decision then if in the end they're thinking about taking advantage of a cannabis growing opportunity in the township of Selwyn. They know that there's a set of rules that will apply. And so as it relates to changing the setbacks, I guess in this particular context, I think that would be problematic. Changing the rules midstream, I think would be problematic. In the end, I am, although recommending that we correspond with the applicant through their agent to reiterate the concerns that were expressed to us this evening and earlier discussions. In addition, that we correspond with the health unit, with Health Canada, who ultimately will decide upon whether or not to issue a license in this particular context. We want them to have regard for the site security issues. We want them to consider the issue of using the aquifer for irrigation. We also want them to consider how the products and the waste products generated from this operation will be managed. And we also want them to have regard for the fact that there is real close adjacent residential properties, and that should be factored into how they develop their approval, if that's indeed what their intention is to do. So I'll leave it for you, Mr. Chair, that for the committee, or sorry, for council to consider the recommendations that I've made in the report.
Thank you, Rob. I see Donna would like to make a comment.
Yes, thank you very much. Through you, I previously prepared some items that I want to talk about, and I apologize that some of the things in my document will be repeated, but I don't want to cross things out and skip around because I'm afraid that it won't have a continuous flow to it. So I apologize in advance for that. I want to thank Mr. Muir and other residents who have spent countless hours and energy researching the growing of cannabis, as well as other operations related to this crop. The entire cannabis industry was new to council and staff, and we were tasked to create local bylaws to support the federal directive that the growing, processing, and selling of cannabis is now legal as long as the correct federal permits are in place. We hired a consulting firm, as has been mentioned, to give advice related to creating a bylaw to establish provisions that apply to cannabis cultivation and processing within our township. Council received the report from Meridian Consultants, proceeded to conduct a survey as well as host an open house, and received little input through these two forums. Therefore, we move forward with bylaw 2020-002. 390 Cork Line is our first application for an outdoor cultivation proposal or for any other cannabis operation. It is important to note that Health Canada issues the licenses to grow, process, or to cultivate cannabis, not the township. An email was circulated last week showing a response from Miriam Monsef's office contradicting this statement. I had a conversation as well as an email from Mr. Peter Mitchell, casework manager and chief of staff for the Honorable Miriam Monsef last Friday. He apologized for the mistake made by one of his staff members and plans to send the correct response to the property owners who received this email. He believes that only one incorrect response was sent out, but if people know of more, please let me know. The January 19th, today's report from our manager of building and planning outlines a number of mitigation measures that we will ask the owners / manager of 290 Cork Line to implement. I support these recommended mitigation measures. I think it's important as well that Health Canada understand the concerns of the residents. And I would ask that we send these concerns tonight or forward them on to Health Canada. It's also important that residents contact Health Canada directly with their concerns. And I'm certain that office staff can help with contact information if you need it. Another suggestion that I would add is that our staff send a Zoom link for tonight's meeting to Miriam Monsef's office, as well as to Health Canada. And I would suggest that in an email with the Zoom link, please add a request for a response when they receive the link so that we can ensure that they actually received it and know that they received it. We've had some issues in the past where things have been sent off and we're never sure whether it's being received. I will also be asking council to support a resolution in our correspondence from the municipality of Leamington. The resolution was copied to the Prime Minister of Canada, the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, as well as the OPP. The resolution requests that municipalities be notified whenever Health Canada issues permits or certificates to participate in the cannabis industry, and that Health Canada consider land use planning and have regard for the best use of land, water, and other natural resources found in that natural landscape. It also speaks to giving consideration to matters that could cause public nuisance before issuing any permits, licenses, or certificates related to cannabis. So I would be prepared to move Rob's recommendation with the addition of my 2 items that I did in my presentation, and I will turn it over to the rest of council.
So just to be clear, it's Rob's recommendations plus sending the material off to Health Canada. And what's the other one, Donna?
Sending our Zoom link for tonight's meeting to Miriam Monsef's office and to Health Canada, and add a request that they indicate a reply or a response when they receive the link.
Okay, thank you. Does somebody want to second that and then go on? Sherry will second that. Okay, and you want to comment, Sherry, as well? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, through you. Is the applicant for this project on the line, Rob?
No, no.
Okay. Is it true? I haven't really been that involved with all of this. I've received a couple of phone calls and a couple of emails, but the brunt of it has certainly gone with the mayor and with Donna being the ward councillor. But I understand, and tell me if it's true, that 2 buildings are within the setbacks that we put in. Is that true?
Yep. The landowner did build 2 large steel buildings that are less than 50 meters from it's not technically a lot line. It's a line that divides the commercial zone from the rural zone, but the zoning bylaw treats that line as a lot line, so it does require a setback of 50 meters, and those buildings do not meet that 50 meter setback.
Okay, well, I want to state now, I will not support a minor variance for these buildings, and in my estimation, they have to be moved. Thank you.
Okay, Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question and a comment. The question is with regards to the buildings. Is that what we heard about from people in the community with regards to those 2 buildings? They're like the hoop buildings, right? We discussed. Was that the ones we discussed late last year? And then my other comment is, with regards to, I think when council was looking at the whole cannabis cultivation and things like that, in my mind, I sort of envisioned like 100-acre farm property to be used, to grow and cultivate. But certainly nothing in my imagination would have included a 14.5-acre parcel so close to a residential community. So that's really the comment I want to make. And then with regards to the hoop buildings, is this the same location as people were talking about late last year?
I think the buildings, last year there was an illegal grow out on Listowel. So these are 2 steel buildings, not greenhouses by any stretch. No, they're steel buildings that were built. They were built late last year. But I'm not sure if what you're referring to, though, Anita, are the hoop buildings that were on Listowel line that were not there legally.
No, I think the one that then it probably is 2 different locations. And I think you had said at the time that you had been made aware of it and you were going to be looking into it. So I'm going to assume they were 2 separate properties then?
I know
Yeah, because this is never had the hoop buildings on.
Have to put on site here the seedling buildings, and they're considered.
Mike, could you
I don't
please
think they
mute?
can hear
Thank
me.
you. Mike, please mute. Thanks. Thank you, Anita. Jerry.
Thank you. To Sherry's comment regarding the two buildings, and then I'll get to my comments. So question for Rob, were those two buildings built with the knowledge that they had to have that 50-foot setback or prior to?
Yeah, so we actually spoke to the applicant's agent about that, and he confirmed that when they were built, when he spoke to his clients, they were built for a purpose other than for cannabis cultivation. So our zoning bylaw regulates that buildings intended for agricultural purposes, aside from cannabis, a typical agricultural building has to be 30 meters from a lot line, right? So that's what we applied, because the application that was made for the building permit stated that they were for an agricultural purpose, right? And so they complied with the requirements. So and they were built, and so sometime after that, based on the input we received from the applicant's agent, this opportunity came to the landowner, and they decided it was a good idea to explore. And it just so happens that buildings that are intended to be accessory to a cannabis cultivation facility have to be 50 meters from a lot line.
So basically, it's legal non-conforming right now. However, and I don't know how to put this properly. No, to hell with it. Do you feel it was for nefarious? We built it. We knew we were going to be too close. But we knew the pot was coming.
Yeah, I can't speak to whether or not it was done purposely. I mean, it's completely to move it 20 meters would have been no issue, Jerry. So I honestly believe that they either didn't know that if they were going to use it for cannabis that it needed to be 50 meters, or we have to take them at their word that they built them for another agricultural purpose, and then ultimately they're in the wrong location because they're going to be used for another purpose, right? So that's the only way I can answer that. I don't know for certain what they were thinking when they built them, to be honest. But
yeah, and that's fair. So my original comment is I talked to a counselor down in Haldeman County where they've got these fields and fields of them. When I said, "Hey, you guys, how you making out with the cannabis growing?" He said, "Which one?" So they've got fields down there of 150, 200 acres. They've got some smaller ones as well. So the concerns that Mike had brought through tonight are typical of the concerns that they've had down in Haldeman County down there as well. I will comment that he said the smell does happen once a year at harvest time. Depending on which way the wind's blowing will be your smell. With Pigeon Lake there, it should blow away. I imagine there'll be some residual there. As far as crime, property values, the normal stuff that we hear that the residents get concerned about for any project or any development that happens are typical, and again, unfounded down there, or sorry, unfounded here based on what they've done down there, because as you know, we've seen time and time again, nothing happens. So I appreciate Mike's concerns because there is that apprehension whenever there's some change. I personally like it. It's a cash crop. The field's been sitting there growing rocks. Now we can grow some pot, and the guys can make some money. I understand Mike's concern and the neighbors as well, but sometimes we got it's economic development. They're going to be putting in fences. They're going to be running hoses. They're going to be running security. They're going to employ some people. So I think it's pretty hard to turn down.
Thank you, Jerry. Donna?
Yes, I just wanted to add something else about the large steel sheds that were constructed. If they determine that they're going to dry the cannabis in there, it was mentioned at that telephone conference call that we had that HVAC systems would have to be put into those sheds to mitigate odor as well.
Thank you, Donna. Any other comments from councilors? I just have a couple of comments and then I'll go to the vote. So Rob, just a question to you. The applicant or the applicant's agent are aware that those buildings contravene the 50-meter setback?
They are.
And so they're aware they're going to have to do something about it.
Yeah, if they want to use them as accessory buildings to that activity, they will have to do something. Absolutely.
So they may have to relocate them.
Yeah, that's an option. They could make application to vary from the rules. There's other options that they have, but they won't be able to use them unless they address that nonconformity.
Okay. So I just a couple of comments to add to my colleagues. They've said most of what I had in my notes, and I don't think there's any reason to repeat it. But I do want to take a moment to thank Mike and several of his neighbors for bringing their concerns to council's attention. I want to take a moment as well to thank Donna. She's done a significant amount of work with the ratepayers in the Ennismore ward, speaking to them, talking to them, and trying to answer the questions as best that she can. It's important to note tonight is not the beginning of a dialogue. It's actually a continuation of it. And one of the things that I think Rob has made clear is a desire by our council and through that motion to transmit to Health Canada the concerns that have been put forward by all of the folks that have come forward. I also noted, and Mike touched on this a little bit, and I appreciate that, and I think Rob, you did as well. Council went through a fairly extensive process to determine how it was going to react to the federal government's legalization of cannabis through a number of open forums, through putting a temporary control bylaw in place, and doing a real host of things to try to think through this and to try to establish a set of rules that people would know in advance of. And council, I think that process took close to a year, and we arrived at various things. It's different for different things are different, required have different rules. Bottom line is the permission to do any of those things doesn't rest with the township. If you're going to grow or if you're going to process, you need a federal license. If you're going to sell it, you need a retail license issued by the province. We don't have anything to deal with that. We have set rules in terms of locations. So if you're going to sell it, it's got to be in retail. If it's going to be processed, then you need to apply for a zoning bylaw change and a site plan. And if you're going to grow it, we've done it in line with what the provincial policy statement says is appropriate for an agricultural product. So that's the process that council went through, and to try to arrive at a set of rules that we've actually put in place. But as Jerry said, it's clearly understandable why it's brand new, something new, why ratepayers have a concern, and I feel as Donna does the importance of passing this on to Health Canada, as well as to continue that dialogue that was established with the agent and the applicant. We can't stress enough the importance to communicating with the nearby folks so that they're well aware of the process, and that request was made, and you made it, Rob, of the agent to keep us informed. So having made my comments, we do have a motion on the floor. It was moved by Don, and it was seconded by Sherry. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Muir. You're muted, Donna.
Sorry, I wanted a recorded vote. Is it too late?
Well, we kind of voted on it, so, and
Okay.
I could say it was, everybody voted for it, so.
Okay.
Okay, colleagues, thank you, Mr. Muir. Madam Clerk, are we able to go back to our first presentation that we were not able to do?
Yes, we are. We have Brandon Robinson on the line.
Hey, Mr. Robinson, are you there?
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I'm going to turn the floor over to you to make your presentation. I just remind you, we have a 10-minute limit for our presentations, and then I'll ask council if they have any comments. So if you want to proceed, please go ahead.
Okay, Mayor Mitchell and councillors, thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. Speaking on Nick Carchidi Excavating Limited submitted a tender 18-296 for the Lakefield Sanitary Sewer Extension to the Township of Selwyn on November 17th to 20 with performance bonds and securities included, ensuring the performance of the contract to the terms and conditions specified. It came to our attention that on December 8th, the meeting that the Township of Selwyn Council, a staff report was provided called the Lakefield Sanitary Sewer Extension was received, recommending that the project not be awarded to the lowest bidder, further indicating that Nick Carchidi Excavating did not meet all of the project submission requirements. It was only one requirement. It was the requirement not met is related to the preliminary schedule requested within the document. Our preliminary schedule does meet the start date, June 1st, and the completion date of September 15th. We did, at our discretion, as the schedule is preliminary, did elaborate on additional details within the description, and it could be extrapolated to determine that we may not have met an additional date that was contained for substantial completion of August 27th, which is 2 weeks earlier than the final completion. This 2-week difference in no way alters or allows for any manipulation or alteration of the tender price. As well, the consultant's inspection costs remain unchanged, as the June 1st and the September 15th date still remain unchanged, therefore no additional cost there. I suggest this not meeting the submission requirements to the fact that the tender document, page B18, requires bidders to write in the final price excluding HST, both written and numerical form. All the bidders filed this form with HST included. As it is known by comparing the tender results of the bidders recorded to the tender results in the report to council, which are 13% less. This slip up does not meet the submission requirements, but does not mean that the prices submitted aren't acceptable. It's the same as what we deem our submission is the same circumstance. Awarding to the second lowest bidder at a cost of over $84,000 plus HST adds nothing to the project. It only may move up the portion of the work by 2 weeks earlier from the completion date to the substantial completion date. But that's a steep cost for $84,000. I will admit that as the majority of construction contracts provide only a start date and a completion date, we did not provide our preliminary schedule based on the start and completion date, and mistakenly did not consider the 2 week earlier date that could have easily been provided in the schedule. As you know, 2 weeks is nothing in construction when you are battling climatic and ground conditions. Our references were checked and confirmed to be excellent, and we were asked to be added to the consultant's list of pre-qualified contractors. I will note that the purchasing policy and procedures notes as a minimum, is the bid documents have to have 5 sections. The contractor providing a schedule is not listed as one of the requirements. Our company is based in Lindsay, and we work for many of the municipalities to the east and provide contract and emergency repairs to municipalities due to our close proximity. We are only about a half hour away from this project in particular and have employees from the surrounding area. I personally reconstructed Water Street from the pumping station to the lagoon in Lakefield to Road 33, including an overland temporary force main, now be it about 10 years ago, so age is catching up. In closing, I will note it is a basic and integral premise in the construction industry that contracts be awarded to the lowest qualified bidder who has complied with the fundamental requirements of the public tendering process, and sincerely believe we have met this bar while delivering the project $84,000 more economical to you. I thank you for your reconsideration of this and the opportunity to speak to it.
Thank you very much for your comments and for staying within the time limit. Thank you. Any comments from colleagues on council? Donna?
Yes, this is a question to staff. I'm not sure who would answer it. But when they issued the RFP, did they say that the schedule needed to be included in the submission?
Yes. Are you speaking to me or to your staff? Sorry.
I'm speaking to our staff.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's Lane here. I can just address that. I guess the issue is one of the substantial completion, right? That's the key factor here. I don't have the actual tender document right in front of me right now, so I couldn't answer that directly.
You'll get back to Donna?
Sorry, if I can just interrupt, Mr. Mayor. We do have Naomi here from DM Will. She may be able to answer some of those questions.
Hi, this is Naomi with DM Wells. We help prepare the tender for Selwyn. Yes, it is outlined in the instruction to bidders as part of the purchasing policy for the submission of the contract schedule to outline the key completion dates identified in the tender, which were substantial of August 27th and project completion no later than September 15th.
Thank you. Is that what you're looking for, Donna?
I think so. If that's considered the schedule, and if DM Wells is saying that they didn't provide that schedule appropriately, that would be what I was looking for, yes.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other comments? Don't see any. We'll need a motion to receive. From Anita, seconded by. Somebody going to second the motion to receive it?
I will, Jerry.
Jerry, okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, we'll do one more item and then we're going to take a bit of a break. So we're going to go to the public meeting, and my apologies on the public meeting because we're running late, in part because of technological problems. And so this is a public meeting regarding a zoning bylaw amendment in relation to 871 Ward Street. And I take it, Jeanette, I'll turn it over to you to give the legal notice that you have to give, and then we'll, you can describe what's in front of us, and then we'll move from there.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Mitchell. First, I'd like to announce the Township of Selwyn is holding this public meeting to consider applications to amend the zoning bylaw for the Township of Selwyn in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act. This prescribed notice of public meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all residents within 120-meter radius of the subject properties, as well as by a way of a sign being posted on the property. The notice was provided via mail and fax to the prescribed ministries and agencies, and the notice was also available on the township's website. This circulation complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make a written submission to the Township of Selwyn before the bylaw is passed, then the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the council of the township to the local planning appeal tribunal. Nor can a person or public body be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the LPAT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So as the mayor noted, this application is in reference to 871 Ward Street in Bridge North. It is the plaza with the Value Mart and the Guardian Drugs and the restaurant. The subject lands are presently designated commercial and they are zone development. The zoning bylaw amendment will have the effect of changing a portion of the subject property, which I'll get to in a second, from development to local commercial exception 179. This amendment is a condition of a consent application that was filed and provided with provisional consent to the County of Peterborough. The township asked for the rezoning to occur. So the purpose of the severance application was to create a commercial lot. So the commercial lot essentially is the lot where the plaza is already developed. And then a small portion of the property that is actually zoned or in the development zone will also be part of this commercial lot. And that is to recognize an existing septic system that is very close to the zone boundary between the local commercial exception and the development zone. So to recognize that, as well as to allow for a future expansion of that septic system if it's ever required. So that small portion of property that we do have a diagram, or that we've, I think it's figure 2 in the report. It's identified in pink. That's the area that's being rezoned from development to the commercial exception zone to allow for zoning to be the same across the property, as well as there's some setback deficiencies as a result of the severance application. And so those existing setback deficiencies will be recognized. It is my opinion that the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement on the growth plan, and that it does maintain the spirit and intent of the county and township's official plan and the township zoning bylaw. So therefore, I have recommended that you receive this report for information, and that bylaw 2021-001, which is a bylaw to rezone those lands from development to local commercial exception 179, be brought forward to the bylaw section of the agenda for your consideration. And as well as the final recommendation is that there may be some paperwork that has to be completed, like a merger agreement, and so that that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any agreements that are related to the consent application file B1320. I will note that we did receive comments from the Conservation Authority, who have no concerns or objections to the application. We also did receive some comments from the public and lots of questions from the public in relation to this application. We indicate 2 comments we received from Doug Bean and Ross Jompling, who both indicated that they were in objection to the application, as well that they requested some clarification. I think the problem or the concern is that the large portion of property that's identified in green on figure 2, it was to be developed, and that actual property, or that portion, is the retained lands. It will remain designated and zoned as it is. So there will be no change in zoning on that property, which is in the development zone. And the development zone is more of a holding pattern. It's a zone that really indicates that what's happening on the property today is what you can continue to do in the property. If there are to be any changes to that, then rezoning would be required. And so in this case, it's not changing. It's just that small portion identified in pink. So I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Jeanette. What we'll do first is ask if there is anybody in the audience who have indicated that they want to speak in favor of this application. Madam Clerk, was there anybody that registered to speak in favor?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Once again, I thought I was off of mute. Amanda Doherty is here from DM Wills.
Okay, Amanda, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, does everyone hear me okay? Perfect, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Through you, Mr. Mayor. For those of you who can't see me, my name is Amanda Doherty, and I am a planner at DM Wills Associates, and I'm speaking on behalf of the application. I believe I'm also joined tonight by my clients, Mr. Jeff Peters and Mr. Jason Kendall. I don't actually have anything further to add to what Jeanette has already provided. She's explained everything quite nicely, so thank you very much for that, Jeanette. We're of course in agreement with the recommendation of the report. As Jeanette said, this will fulfill a condition of consent. So mostly I'm also just here to answer any questions if there are any, and otherwise to say thank you to council for their time and consideration of this amendment. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak in favor of the application?
I'm not sure if Mr. Peters would like to speak, and I'm sorry, Amanda, I didn't get. And is it Jason, the other applicant? I don't believe he is on the line.
They might be together, I'm not sure, but yes, Jason Kendall was the other individual.
Okay.
Mr. Peters, I see you are on the line. Did you want to say something?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I believe it's been explained quite adequately. The purpose really is to sever the additional land from the plaza and allow the plaza to operate independent of the land.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Anybody else in the audience who would like to speak in favor? Don't believe I see anybody.
There is no one else here to speak to this application, Mr. Mayor.
So nobody to speak against it. Okay, Council, does anybody want to make a comment? Ask a question? I see Anita's hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My only question was with regards to the two people who were concerned. Was the explanation adequate to them that they felt that it was okay to do it this way?
Yes, thank you, Anita, through you, Mayor Mitchell. Yeah, we haven't heard anything from the appellants or from the objectors, sorry, after the explanation was provided. So I really believe that they were concerned that there was going to be a large development occurring behind them. And once they realized that that wasn't the case, they were okay with the application.
Thank you, Jeanette. Any other comments or questions from Council? Don't see any. So do I have a motion to accept? Anita's moving, Jerry's seconding. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, colleagues, that ends our public meeting. Before we get off to staff reports, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I think we're all back. Madam Clerk, are we live and ready to go?
We're good to go.
Okay, the next item is question period. Did anybody register?
We have no one registered.
Okay, we'll go to municipal reports then. The first one is from Adam regarding our water and sewer, or with Lane, on the generator system replacement with various Selwyn water and wastewater facilities. Who's going to speak to that?
I can speak to that, Mr. Mayor. It's Lane here. Yes, the council will recall at the November 10th meeting, staff had presented a report outlining requirements for the TSSA to upgrade some of our generators at 3 different sites. And at that time, based on the value of some of these generators were quite old. So at that time, council provided direction to defer the RFP award pending further investigation into replacements. So since that time, Adam's been doing a lot of work in the industry, basically trying to get an understanding of values of replacement versus retrofits versus actual replacements. So the report before council tonight is recommending replacing these systems with self-contained standalone units. They'll meet current regulatory requirements. They will be much more energy efficient, and they'll have far cleaner exhaust emissions as well. So having reviewed all of the details, the recommendation before council tonight is actually to reject all of the RFP submissions for the upgrades and instead to direct staff to complete a tender for a generator system replacement at the 3 facilities.
Thank you, Lane. Questions, colleagues? Comments? Don't see any. Does somebody want to take? Jerry wants to move. Sherry wants to second. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay. We have a second item. This is from Scott regarding the renovations to the Scout House.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can speak to the report. I will, this has been before council as well for this issue. So I'll take just a few minutes to walk through some of the points in the report and then respond to any questions council may have. As a reminder, this matter was before council in December, and council directed staff to gather some additional information on the tender submission. We asked the 2 low bids that actually completed complete bid packages to provide us with more of a breakdown of their bid, and we consulted with the architect on this project. And I'll update council on that information in just a bit, but I wanted to remind council how this project is interconnected with a number of other council endorsed projects. One part of the project would create a new location for the police office in Lakefield. It would allow the police service to then move from their current location to this location. That would free up space on the main floor of the existing police services location and allow us to move ahead there with our ongoing design of barrier-free access to the 2nd floor of that building. Of course, ultimately, we hope to create a business incubator space there and further a partnership with the chamber and the business community in the Lakefield area. The main floor space is required also for the addition of a barrier-free washroom and then the actual elevator, which will provide that access. Once the police moves, that would allow the chamber space to grow, further supporting the business community. And as such, the Scout building renovations and design are therefore very integral to a number of these other initiatives. With respect to the actual building now, when we talk about the actual Scout building, the design maximizes the use of the space as it relates to accessibility and energy efficiency. It basically takes a tired building and completes upgrades. We found out during the review that there are repairs required to the foundation. It would put a new roof, siding, windows, and doors in the facility. Of course, whenever we do a retrofit, we would upgrade insulation levels in the exterior wall in the attic, do energy efficient lighting, and essentially a complete refresh of the building exterior and interior. There is no doubt that the scope of this project has grown from the very first time the council saw this, probably a year and a half ago. But as Scott has really confidently outlined in his report, the components ensure that decisions that are being suggested to council are made for the long term. We're repairing existing deficiencies in a building that we've got back into our fold again after not having it for many decades. And it would result in a structure that complements the park and its future plans. In looking at the renovation costs, much the same that we just talked about in the other report that was just before council, staff stepped back and looked at the cost of renovating versus building new. And of course, it's always hard to get an exact comparison, but we used a number of per square foot costs for similar construction. In this instance, we have a public washroom space, office space, meeting space, and storage space. So a number of different square footages and cost per square foot that could come into play. When we do all of that calculation, the costs come in marginally higher than the existing tender that's before council. And that doesn't include the costs already incurred in design and any demolition costs. So in this instance, after completing our analysis, we're recommending the council that we would move forward and appoint the contract to W.S. Morgan Construction, feel that the renovation represents good value for a very substantial renovation. There may be other questions, so I'll just stop there and see if the council has any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lane. Just before I turn it over to my colleagues, I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly. So when this originally came to council, we were going to achieve certain things. We were going to be able to free up the space downtown in Lakefield. By moving the police, we were going to basically provide, as I'm going to call it, a staging area. It's a little bit more than that at Isabel Morris Park. And when we first looked at that, we got a cost, and you're going to correct me because I'm not going to give you the exact amount, but I think it was a little bit more than $200,000, and we were getting about 10% of that through a grant. So now we're down the road a bit. I think it's pretty close to double the cost. It might not be quite, but it's pretty close. So I've got a real cost escalation on one side, but if you could help me, because it seems like the value proposition though hasn't changed. I'm going to pay twice as much for what I thought I was going to get before. Now I may be missing something that there is actually additional value from when it first came to us, but it just seems to me that what's being presented is for the same benefit, but at twice the cost. And it's not to suggest that any of these things aren't good, and it's not to suggest that people haven't done some really good due diligence and tried to figure it all out. But I'm just trying to square in my mind that I'm looking at double the cost for the same value proposition. And my basic question is to you, Lane, am I missing something?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that the answer to that question primarily lies on page 2, the second paragraph, but I'll go into a little detail on that. And I would agree, and as I mentioned before, that the scope changed from day one to where we were with council with a budget estimate of over $200,000. But in looking at that and following the guidance of our architect, we came up with that price and realized that really that estimate was about a year old to begin with. The scope definitely grew when we got involved in looking at the foundation. So foundation repairs, repointing, insulation, things like that. That's an additional $40,000 roughly over and above that estimate that we provided to council. In looking at the roof and tying in the accessible overhangs to get into the building, things like that. We were originally looking at some minor roof repairs, and we added those awnings, basically, dormers rather, that come out from the roof. Snow guard, so a new steel roof was the answer there. So that's about another $45,000, and we're looking at some ways there to save some money from changing our specification, possibly from a standing seam roof to a more of a standard traditional roof that we see on some of our other buildings. basically, as I mentioned, the building is quite tired after not being in our care for a number of years, decades really. So we had the replacement of the siding, soffit, fascia, and eaves trough. So that adds about another $30,000 to the overall project. And those canopied barrier-free entrances were about $34,000. So when you take a look at the original, I shouldn't say the original price, but the estimate that we gave council, which was, we found out now is really like about a year old. You add these other components, that's where you get closer to that dollar value. And with the spring start, the number comes down to about 414. So definitely the scope has grown on the project, but then there are a number of these other components that were added. And the whole goal every time we do a building renovation is to try to get the building up to speed and get it renovated and make long-term investments and then move on.
Thank you, Lane. Colleagues, Anita?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many square feet is the building currently?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned, there's a number of different components in it, but the building itself is, the total square footage is around 1,625 square feet. It's comprised of washroom space, office space, open recreation space, and then just storage space because there is a small garage on the very end of it. So in looking at the square footage costs, we needed to ensure that we looked at comparable construction estimates. Right? So because of the fact, first of all, it's an institutional building and it's got at least 4 different components, we needed to look at comparable per square foot costs. So we went out to the market, we went back to the contractor involved, and we looked at some of the different prices, say of a fire hall construction. We looked at the price of a workout fitness facility. And then we had some general office space. So in trying to pull all of those different components together on that 1,625 square foot building, that's where we got a lot closer to the roughly $450,000 on a new build.
I just find it a bit challenging as all because to build a house is about between $150 and $175 a square foot. So even if we went up to $200 a square foot, I understand you're talking about the different components and the different uses and that sort of thing, but $200 a square foot is still only, it's $325,000. So I'm just, you know, when I look at all the stuff that you know, the foundation repairs for an insulation at $40,000 and the steel roof at $45,000 and soffit fascia, eaves trough, and the barrier-free entrances, like that. Just those 4 items are about, I think, about $150,000. So I'm just struggling a little bit with the actual, you know, ultimate cost of $414,000. But I think I can understand why you're suggesting it.
Terry, did I see your hand up?
Thank you. Through you to Lane. I've got similar to the mayor's comments. My question comes down to timing at this point. Do we have so 2 questions. Yeah. Do we have an immediate need right now to get the police out of the building they're in? And does the chamber need that space right away?
Sure, to you, Mr. Mayor. So a few components there in terms of the need to proceed. Part of the funding for this program is through the RED grant. Very small component, definitely, of this overall project, but about $24,000 of provincial grant, which needs to be completed by November, or we don't receive that funding. If we don't know for sure that we can move the police, then we pretty much have to put our design on hold for the accessibility to the 2nd floor at the police station. And once again, if we don't know the police can actually move, then we can't proceed really with any further renovations to provide accessible washroom space there as well. So that's why I spent a little time at the start just showing how these are all kind of interconnected. the actual bid that we have is good for 60 days, so it's good until later in this month. But then at that point, that bid would no longer be good as well, and then we'd have to consider: are we going to go back out for other bids, or do we want to change things? So we just kind of progressed down the road a little bit here, and yeah, there definitely are some pressing issues, but you know, is there any one reason why council needs to make this determination? Really, just that small amount of funding is the big thing, and then delays on other projects.
So to follow up on my timing point, you know, the price of steel's high. There's an aluminum shortage right now. Price of lumber is high, and every single trade is in high demand. So they're commanding a pretty good buck right now. So the timing issue, if we maybe delayed this, and I understand about the grant part, but maybe if we delayed it a year, maybe a year and a half till this COVID thing gets settled up and home renovations slowly die off, maybe the cost may come down. That's my concern is right now is the timing. Is this the optimum time to get best bang for our buck?
Yeah, I guess I understand what you're saying there, Councillor Aaron. Definitely, you know, we're hearing that in terms of the building industry. I can say I haven't seen too many projects that have come down in price when you wait, but definitely we haven't seen times like this with the pandemic as well. So I understand what's being said there.
Donna, did I see your hand up?
Yes. I also had the same concerns as Councillor Herron, that right now we are in times whereby building is very expensive, building materials are very expensive, and this seems like a lot of money for 1,625 square feet. So I have concerns about spending that amount of money for that amount of real estate.
Thank you, Donna. Sherry, did you want to say anything?
Thank you, through you. When you walk into the police station at the OPP or at the Peterborough Police, there are barriers there, physical barriers that were there pre-COVID. There's a lot of security. And when you go into the chamber office, they have the same thing. There's glass partitions. Is all of that part of the cost that is being given to us right now, that they would be receiving the same kind of security that they have at the chamber office?
Yeah, definitely. That's why we had an architect involved and made it very clear to them that this was police space. So all of the different design features that were put together understand that this is a police space, and that there would be appropriate wiring and different things in place to ensure that there's security in those things. With respect to the barriers, like for instance, counter guards and things like that on the interior, that would be treated more like fixtures and furniture, but definitely in terms of the lobby area and the security of that, that would all be taken into account by the architect.
Okay. And if the police were to move over there, would we be in a position to start work on the other property right away, or is that something that we have to come up with some money to be able to fulfill what we're trying to accomplish over there?
Yeah, so the design was included in the design costs at the old police station were included in the 2019 budget. And when we ran into the issue of square footage challenges there, we put a stop on that design. We've included that in the budget that went before council in November in the capital budget. And so that is in what's been approved to date, at least to include in the budget. So we have that design cost in for the police station in the existing budget going towards council in the next week.
But I'm talking about the chamber building. Would we be in a position to proceed with that if we did the work at the Scout building? We have to put a new elevator in, correct?
Yeah, so that's first of all, we have to get it first of all, we have to get it designed, and so the design for the elevator and for the accessible washroom on the main floor, all those design costs are included in the existing budget. And then once everything is designed, then we have to figure out what potential construction costs would be included, and we put together a plan to bring that forward to council.
But I was just trying to try to clarify. So, Lane, we would get design done this year, but there would be no construction done this year,
right? There wouldn't be construction there, but at the same time, we would be lucky to get construction done by the fall at the Scout building. So ideally, we'd have the design done at the same time that the Scout building was completed. The police could move, and then we could let the contract for the design and installation at the other location. So that's where I mentioned it kind of all falls, one domino after the other.
Donna?
I was just wondering if staff have consulted the police to ensure that they would be amenable to moving to a fairly central position to a rather, I don't know what the word is.
Less central.
Less central for sure. Yes. I wonder, has anybody consulted them?
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor. Definitely staff have been in consultation with the police from day one. Met with them several times on it. Angie specifically with the staff in the location and the staff that work out of that location. Janice and I met with the chief financial officer for the city, chatted with them all to ensure that everything was fine. And with respect to it not being as central, it's definitely not on the main street, but given its location adjacent to the arena, adjacent to the marina, skateboard park, the farmers market, all of those different spots. So it may not be on the main street in Lakeville, but it's definitely a very central spot and a lot of high activity there for sure. And that was another comment that the police actually made. They thought it was a good spot for them to be.
Okay. Colleagues, I think if I could just be so bold as to make a suggestion here, there are really three options that I can see and how we can go forward in. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, sorry about that. So colleagues, just to be bold and make a suggestion here, that really there are three options that I think we could consider. And clearly from the comments, everybody's, a little bit torn on this one. So one is we could just accept the tender and move forward. One is we could defer this project for a year and ask to come back and revisit it next year, because I don't think there's, unless I've missed it, I don't think there's any desire amongst council just to discard the whole thing. The other option, and again, it may not be of any value for colleagues, is we've got a budget meeting coming up, I think, in a couple of weeks, and to have this discussion in the context of the pluses and minuses of our overall budget. That might be an opportunity. It could also be just seen as a delay in making a decision. I understand that too, but so I really think that we need to take up one of those three options. I don't think anybody wants that just outright say it's not a good idea to try to do something with the Scout building, because I think we're all there. But I just throw that out, and I don't know if anybody has any comment about that. Jerry?
I'll make a motion to defer the budget.
Okay. Is there a second, or need a second at that? Okay. Is there any comment on that, or are we ready for a vote? Not seeing any comment. This is a vote to defer this issue to have it as part of our budget discussion at the end of the month. So whenever it is. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you, colleagues. We'll now go to the consent items. We know that Donna wants to pull 6-35, so I've already made a note of that. You made that in her comments earlier today. I'd like to, before I say what I want to pull, who else got something to pull there? Anita, what do you want to pull?
Under correspondence, number 17, number 30, And under county, number 2.
1730 and 2. Okay, Gary, anything? No? No? Donna, you wanted to pull 635. Anything else? Just that one? Sherry, did you want to pull anything? No, Sherry didn't want to pull anything. And I wanted to pull 6, 5, 11, and 13. So away we go. So first one, and just bear with me. So on 6.5, all I was hoping to do is to ask Lane if you could just recap for us, because this talks about that, the kind of support we received from the provincial government in 2020 and the commitments for 2021 in respect of the challenges that we've been facing. Lane, I don't know whether you have those figures or not, but if you do, if you could just let us know.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, as part of the budget process, we typically provide a narrative and a full review of the grants that we receive from the upper levels of government. So definitely have some of that information available. And really, with respect to the provincial support, it's been great as we go through COVID in particular. We typically receive 2 types of grants from the province: unconditional grants, which council has full say over, and conditional grants, which are basically a listing of eligible expenses that we need to meet. In 2020, we received generally, I'll just hit the highlights of our typical grants: the UMP grant, modernization grant round 1, modernization round 2, that was the service delivery reviews. Safe Restart, that's specific to the COVID pandemic. Safe Restart 2, that was our application under that same program. Those in 2020, the province provided a little over $2.6 million. And of that amount, we used in 2020 approximately $2.4 million. In 2021, they have committed, the province has committed at this point $1.3 million, and committed we have is about 1.2. So the balance of that general funding is about $250,000 left, about 130 in the modernization round 1, and about 106,000 for the Safe Restart, which was the 2021 number. And council will recall that we were allocated $100,000 for COVID infrastructure. We do have an application in, but that has not yet been formally approved. In addition to that, there are a number of conditional grants that I mentioned. So the OCF grant, Main Street grant, which was in Young's Point, the MTO Transit grant, which is a large one, about 1.5 million, but that's still in a pilot stage at this point. The RED funding for Trailtown, and then of course we get a public library grant, which is also unconditional. So in 2020, that number was about $1.8 million. It's only about 100,000 has been used of that. 2021, 215,000, and we have committed about 400,000. So not only that 215, but there some of that other project that we mentioned. So the largest component there, which is not committed yet, is the MTO Transit grant of $1.2 million. So yeah, definitely the support from the province, and just in 2020 alone, about $4 million. So it's great to have the senior levels of government support us, and especially at a time like we went through with COVID, for sure.
Thank you, Lane. That's very impressive, and I know how appreciative we are of seeing that support come our way. So thank you for being able to enunciate that, and I suspect we'll be discussing that some more during the budget meeting as well. The next one I had was 611, which is a letter from the Solicitor General regarding the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And I see that they pushed the deadline back to, I think it's July 1st, but just a question, I don't know who, whether it's to Janice or whoever, but even that July 1st deadline seems really unrealistic to be able to to meet that kind of timeline. And I just, am I being overly pessimistic, or is that a doable thing to get that done by July 1st?
Actually, no, I would agree with you completely. It's an extension, but it's not enough of an extension to make it feasible to get through the planning that would be done or be required to be done to get that plan pulled together. I think there will be some letters coming forward to council. There is a movement to submit to the ministry a request to have that extension extended. So I think that is something that would come back to council. Hopefully at the next meeting we'll have the information, and we would support resolutions to seek a further extension.
Thank you for that. Okay, so that's 6.5, 6.11. The next one is let's see, it was no, 6.13. That's fine. So 6.17, Anita. You're still muted, Anita.
Sorry, pushed the wrong button. This is with regards to the Board of Health, specific to the COVID-19 pandemic locally. So the numbers, they went really high and then they've been steadily dropping. My question is, if there are false positives that are found in results, are they removed from the overall number, or do they, and how many false positives? I know back in, I think it was April, May, I think there was like 22 false positives that came through. It was a lab error in Ottawa or something. Have there been any other false positives in our region, I guess, since the start of the pandemic, not including the 22, I think, that were back, or, you know, within a month or so of the pandemic being announced?
Not that I'm aware of. Well, I worded that wrong. I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm happy to find it out for you.
Okay, thank you. So it's not something that you would discuss at your Board of Health meetings then?
It was not discussed at our Board of Health meeting.
Okay, thank you.
But I will endeavor to find that out for you.
Okay, thank you.
So that was 17. The next one is yours again, 30.
Okay, this is a question for Rob. It's with regards to the Ontario Heritage Act, number 30. No, sorry, 29. I should have said 29. It's the Ontario Heritage Act. Rob, can you speak to that at all, or would it be something that we should bring up at our Municipal Heritage Committee meetings? It talks about Conservation Review Board, local planning appeal tribunals. I don't know if either of those even has any impact, or if we have something like that locally, but could you speak to that, or could we bring it to the Heritage Committee just to see if it actually is applicable to us locally?
Yeah. I think that the correct approach would be to have the committee review the implications of the changes now. Yeah. So the implication is that until this particular revision, appeals to designations were considered by a heritage review board made up of people who have a background in heritage architecture and culture, and this change would revert the decisions to deal with appeals to LPAT, which, in the opinion of the author of this particular resolution, don't have the kind of background necessary to make an informed decision about or really what they're doing is they're providing counsel with their opinion about the validity of a particular application, right? So ultimately, it's always council's decision, but this body would rule on and provide some additional insight. So yeah, so I think to answer your question, this would be a good matter for the Heritage Committee to look at and to maybe provide council with their thoughts on a response.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is 6-35, and Don, if I understood you correctly, from earlier, you'd like us to separate this out and vote to support, to endorse and support that resolution from Leamington, I think it is, right?
Yes, that's correct. It addresses a lot of the issues expressed by the ratepayers tonight, specifically that Health Canada be more transparent in granting permits and licenses, and also that they consider long-term safety and best use of land, water, and natural resources, as well as issues that could cause public nuisance like odor. So it's totally perfect to the issues that our residents are seeing. So I would like to have council support that.
Okay, so we're going to deal with this one separately. So you're going to want to move it then, right? That we endorse and support that.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a seconder to that? Sherry is going to second that. Okay. All those in favor will dispose of this item. That's carried. Okay. Good. We can then move on to county report number 2, which I think Anita was asking about.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say congratulations on being sworn in as a deputy warden for the next 2 years. So congratulations.
Thank you, Anita. So that's that. So committee reports are accepted. So we just need a resolution to receive all of those consent items. Jerry, seconded by Donna. All those in favor? Those are carried. Petitions, we do have 3 petitions. They all relate to the presentation that we heard earlier. Can I have a motion to receive? Sherry, seconded by Donna. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, let's go to portfolio updates, and we'll go first to Donna.
Yes, we had our first library board this afternoon for 2021. And it was basically setting up virtual programs, trying to do at least 2 a month, and reestablishing the curbside pickup and the sanitizing of the books for 3 days when they're returned. Fundraising was put on hold, but we certainly do have to consider it because our fundraising revenues are down considerably. As you might guess, that our thrift stores are closed again and we haven't had book sales. Had a rec meeting last week, which was mainly updates that council knew about. Jerry may want to add to that. Police Services Board meeting will be next Monday, and the link is still scheduled to start at May the 1st. But, and we haven't heard yet if an extension will be provided for the grant, but I was told that it's still being considered. And that's all, thanks.
We'll go next to economic development. Sherry.
Yes, the orders that are in place right now by the province, they're very clear. They say to people, stay home. Only go out for essentials, which is groceries, to the pharmacy to get your meds. You can go out for a walk. And people in our township are listening because unfortunately for our restaurants and people who are providing food, there's not a lot of people going out to do takeout. And I know they're all struggling. And there are people who work in the frontline workers who work long hours and depend on the ability to get takeout because they're tired and it's not enough to keep these businesses going. So I'm concerned about our restaurants, and I'm sure all the restaurants in the province are probably going through the same kind of thing. So I just encourage everyone to do takeout once in a while. Help our local businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Public Works and Recreation, Jerry.
Thank you, sir. Public Works, as everybody knows, just flies along just beautifully there. The snow's getting cleared. People are happy. Over to Park and Rec, where it's a different story here right now. The arenas are on hold until the provincial lockdown's done. Scheduling for the 10th right now. Waiting to see what happens. The full-time staff are working on the facilities and trails and, you know, snow removal, helping out Public Works at this point. They're able to get a bunch of little stuff done that just needs to be done that you just never get to, which is kind of nice. And they're also looking at the feasibility of the events for 2021. Mike, in being in management, some days are a lot easier than others, and some days are a lot harder. And Mike had a hard one the other day, and you could tell in his voice and in his face at the Park and Rec meeting when he had to. He let us know that he had to lay all his part-time staff off. There's good days and bad days in management, and you could tell that Mike wasn't pleased about that, but it bothered him. So that sort of speaks to Mike's character, and I think it speaks to the relationship that he's got with his staff as well. So we're looking forward to getting those guys back when this flu is done.
Thank you, Jerry. And Anita on culture and senior services.
Okay, so there's really only one main item, and if you haven't started receiving emails already, you will be receiving them soon, probably specifically myself as board counselor and deputy mayor and the mayor. It's with regards to 44 Bridge Street in Lakefield, and I'll let Rob speak quickly to the challenges and the zoning and all that other stuff, but Nelson's Falls to Lakefield. So the house is located at 44 Bridge Street. We did have a special meeting of our Heritage Committee last week. And there's also any of you that are on Facebook and follow Vintage Lakefield. I just noticed there's a really long thread going with regards to this particular property. So the home was built by from local stone by Frank D'Arcy. He also built and operated the first grist mill on the west side of Lakefield. The mill was built in 1858 and the home in the early 1860s. The water-powered mill was located in today's Curtis Park, which is down sort of in between the two bridges. About the mid-1860s, the home and mill were purchased by John Hall. John served on council in 86 to 87, 82, and 88 to 1896. There's also the villagery from 1899 to 1900. The home remained in the Hall name until 1945 when it was purchased by Dr. and Mrs. Reginald Campbell, and he was a local dentist. Anyway, there has been a building permit issued. The property is currently zoned commercial, and Rob is going to explain the challenges involved with the whole issue. Please, Rob.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So this property has actually recently been up for sale, and as a function of that sale process, it did come to the community's attention that a permit to demolish the existing structure had been issued in the summer. So this particular property is viewed by certainly the people that have been calling me and Anita as a heritage building, and based on the review that I've done since, would have some certainly some heritage and cultural significance to the township. But in the end, it doesn't have any protection afforded through the Heritage Act. So I was compelled to issue the demolition permit. The property was listed and has been sold conditionally at this point in time, and the intent is that the purchaser would like to develop the property for the purpose of for a commercial purpose, with some residential opportunities above the first floor. So at this point in time, we've, as I said, we're at a point where we've issued a demolition permit, and the building could be demolished at any time. I'm not sure that's going to happen imminently, but that's essentially where it's at. So I was contacted maybe a couple of weeks ago with from an individual who was obviously concerned about the loss of this heritage structure. We can convene a meeting, a heritage committee meeting, and talked about what reaction we might have. And so I've been tasked with, speaking to the prospective purchaser and getting their sense of, what their intents are with the building and whether or not there's an opportunity to try to incorporate it as part of their design, which isn't likely. Or if that's not at all possible, then what other things could we do to, I guess, whether or not it's feasible to relocate it or whatever other opportunities, I guess, that we could explore. So that essentially summarizes what's happened in the last couple of weeks as it relates to that site. And I think to Anita's point, the likelihood is that there will be some additional questions, right, as more and more people learn about it. There was an article in the Herald, a letter to the editor that expressed some regret for what's gone on to date, and which again may engender some additional input from the public.
Thank you, Rob. Anita, go ahead.
Yeah. So I just want to add that, like I said, when I get the emails, I actually I CC them to Robert, and then he gives a full explanation. People don't like the answer, but as I said to Vintage Lakefield, there's a long thread that I saw earlier. So get ready to get some phone calls or emails.
Jerry?
Joe Latour sent out an email this evening, and one of his suggestions was to put a plaque on the building, and maybe that would be a direction to go. But we're not making decisions right now, are we, Mr. Mayor?
No, we're not. So it might be an idea, Rob, that you can keep council up to date.
I can certainly do that. I think you were carbon copied on my response to an email, that was forwarded to me from a concerned resident. And it kind of included my response to her, which is a summary of what's going on today. I'll carry on doing that as well.
Carbon copy, that's an interesting phrase, Rob, in this day and age. Reminds me of my days in the workforce. Okay. Any other, anything else, Anita, in your portfolio? Okay, I'll just talk to mine a bit. First, on the public health side, on the COVID side, clearly we're being challenged. Today, I noticed that our numbers in January today, and we're January 19th, are now more than we had all of December. And taking a look at some numbers in the 4 weeks, these would be as of Sunday. So the 4 last weeks, going backwards from Sunday, we had 222 cases. In the 4 weeks before that, we had 92. So whatever way you want to take a look at the numbers, we've seen a substantial increase in our community, and that corresponds to what is being observed happening across the province. As Sherry spoke to in her report, there is a stay-at-home order in place, and really we had a press conference today with public health, and a number of people spoke to it, and the bottom line was, if you have to go out, then undertake your essential business. But if it's simply something you want to do, then probably you ought to stay home. So make the distinction between want and have to. And there are a number of things that are in that order that you have to do. If you're deemed that you need to be at your workplace, then going to work is an essential activity. As Sherry mentioned, if you've got to pick up groceries or other things like that. And if you go through the order, there are a number of them that are there. But the bottom line is COVID transmits through human contact. Reduce the amount of human contact, you reduce the amount of spread of COVID. There's all kinds of reams of paper written about it, but that's it in its simplest way. Just on vaccines, I know that Sherry, you've got a notice of motion there, so I'm not going to say too much about it, other than to say they're essentially a 3-phase program that the province has put forward. There's phase 1 where it concentrates specifically on high-risk populations. There's a phase 2 which they refer to as mass delivery of the vaccine. That's where most Ontarians will see the access to the vaccine come. And phase 3 was just what they call steady state, because at some point they're going to want to regularly vaccinate people. And so that's been put in place in the province. The medical officer of health mentioned today that there is vaccine that is coming to Peterborough, that's scheduled to come to Peterborough in the beginning of February, that will be targeted at our high-risk populations. I wanted to just mention, Sherry and I Thursday, we'll be attending the ORCA AGM. Will be occurring. That's virtual because of the COVID situation. On the county items, the one that I did want to mention on the county, it has to do with the blue box. As you know, the province is moving to a producer responsibility for recycling. So the recycling is going to become the responsibility of the person that manufactures the good or the packaging, and they're going to be responsible for footing the cost. And that concept makes a lot of sense. The challenge we're going to have is, as it rolls out in practical terms, is to make sure that the way in which it's implemented doesn't disadvantage smaller rural communities. So if you're doing it from a private sector perspective, what gives you a great return on in a highly densely populated place like Toronto may not make the same economic sense in a less densely populated area like Selwyn. Having said that, though, recycling is just as important to Selwyn as it is in Toronto. So as we work through this, it's going to, in my view, going to be really important that they come up with plans that do not disadvantage the residents of our community and the broader community of Peterborough County, so that we continue to have a readily available way of disposing of our recycling. The other thing I just wanted to mention before we move on is just to give a bit of a shout out to some of the people we work with in relation to COVID. First of all, both our MP and our MPP are holding regular meetings with the area mayors to keep everybody up to date on what their governments are doing and to hear input from us. And so I just want to express an appreciation to both of them for doing that. Also, we saw the OPP this week meet with the mayor, in our case, the deputy mayor as well as the CAOs, to talk about the orders, enforcement, what that is going to mean. I know our medical officer of health now is meeting twice a week with the media to bring them up to date. And there's lots of other examples of people doing that. So I just wanted to thank everybody for all of their hard work in keeping us up to date and providing various venues for us to provide our opinion and to ask the questions that we need to. So that was my report. And so we're going to go on to other new and unfinished business. And just before we complete A, I'd like to do an A-1. So we need to schedule a special council meeting for the dashboard review. We also, colleagues, need to schedule a special council meeting to complete our process for the CAO evaluation. So we need to establish for both of those. And so is Angie on the line somewhere? I can't see her.
No, Angie's not.
Janice? Okay, so Janice. So one of the ways that we can do this, and I'll just throw this out. We've got two meetings coming up. One is the budget meeting, and then we have our regular meeting in February. And so a thought could be we could do each of those 1 hour for each one of those before those regularly scheduled meetings. Anita, I don't know whether that works into your work schedule or for anybody else, because anyways, that's
Okay.
one thought, or I'm open to anything. Yes, Anita?
So the budget meeting, I'm fine. The budget meeting, I'm fine. We can add an hour to that. And I'm available Wednesdays at any time. And Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm available 3 o'clock onwards, or 3:15.
Okay.
Unless I have a committee meeting, and I'd have to sort of double check my calendar for Heritage and Accessibility Committee. But like I said, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, anytime after 3 or 3:15. The budget meeting, I'm good for any time.
What time is the budget meeting scheduled to start?
9 o'clock.
That would be starting at 8. I don't think I'm getting a big pickup on an 8 o'clock start. Well, we could.
I guess, Andy, typically the dashboard meeting really doesn't last that long, so maybe an 8:30 start.
Okay, let's do an 8:30.
Yeah.
An 8:30 start for the dashboard meeting, and then 1 hour before our regularly scheduled council meeting, the first one in February, we'll complete the CAO evaluation.
Just on that, we will have to check to see whether or not your legal counsel is available to assist you.
Yeah, please, if you could do that for us, Janice, or Angie do it, or whoever.
Yeah, I will have staff do that and follow up.
Okay, thank you. So are colleagues comfortable with that?
What time on the 9th of February?
It would be at 5 o'clock, right?
No, it's a 5 o'clock council meeting.
Is it? Okay, then it would be 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Jerry?
Do we maybe want to do 3 o'clock? That way we give ourselves a little bit extra time, grab a bite, go to the meeting.
I'm comfortable with 3. Sherry is Sherry, did you want to say something about 3 o'clock start?
I have a wife to make me a bite.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I said I don't have a wife to make me a bite, Mr.
Oh.
Me neither.
But it is going to, these are all virtual, so we can take a break between the 2 meetings and we can wander off to the kitchen.
So the CAO meeting would also be virtually?
Yes, everything has to be virtually. Not ideal, but it's what we got. So let's set it for 3 o'clock. Then we wrap it up early. We have time to run to the kitchen, get a break. Okay. So 8:30 for the dashboard in advance of the budget meeting, and 3 o'clock for the CAO in advance of the next council meeting, subject to availability of council. Okay, good.
Right. So for the notice of motion, I'm just going to go to another part of the house. I'm going to leave.
Right. Okay, you've declared a conflict on that. Okay.
Sorry, before we move on to that, we do need a motion for the 2 meetings, please.
Moved by Donna, seconded by Jerry. All those in favor, carried. Okay, thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Tanya. So let the record note that Anita has left the room, a virtual room in this case, and I will turn it over to the Deputy Mayor, who has a notice of motion.
Yes, thank you very much, through you. Should I read the motion? It's a long motion. And I believe it's in the public realm, and we've all read it. Do you want me to read it?
I'm fine without you reading it, and it's up to Donna and Jerry. I think Jerry has indicated it's fine not to read it. Donna saying you don't have to read it. You just may want to speak to it.
Yes, I do. So we know the pandemic has put a spotlight on long-term care homes across the province, with devastating results for family members with the loss of loved ones, and conditions in some homes deplorable to hear about. As of this week, over 3,000 residents have died and 10 staff. Every day we hear about another outbreak in a long-term care home. As I'm a board member of Fairhaven, I felt it appropriate to bring forward this motion, which the executive director, Lionel Towns, supports. I don't take credit for the action recommendations. Rather, they come from the owners of Toronto Star Publications, who have asked the public to sign a letter of support for the recommendations, which are supported by countless health officials and experts. Dr. Salvatierra also supports this motion and asks that vaccinations be added for retirement homes and congregate senior living facilities, such as community care homes and seniors living in Peterborough housing as examples. The province has made the commitment to vaccinate at long-term care homes by February the 15th, even with the setback of supply that we heard about today. We would be reiterating that commitment by supporting this motion. Quebec has done a massive hiring of staff and trained them for their long-term care homes, and their numbers have decreased substantially as a result. In Ontario, we should follow suit and pay the staff accordingly. We have the second largest population of seniors in Canada living here in Peterborough County. Many of them are vulnerable and cannot speak for themselves. I feel Selwyn Township should provide support for the action recommendations, and I hope my colleagues feel the same way. Thank you.
Larry, you're moving. I think, Donna, you're seconding? Okay. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay. We are now, thank you for doing that, Sherry. We are now have Anita, who's come back into the virtual room, and we will deal with, I think we have the bylaw. So we have the zoning bylaw, which we dealt with earlier at the public meeting. We have the interim tax bylaw, which was at a consent item. We had the borrowing bylaw, which was a consent item. And we are not going to do item D. We have deferred action on that. So if I could have a motion for A, B, and C, moved by Anita, seconded by Donna, all those in favor? Those are carried. I then need a confirming bylaw from Sherry and Donna, all those in favor, that's carried. And we need a motion to adjourn from Jerry, seconded by Anita, all those in favor. Okay, colleagues, thank you very much. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.